Hey guys,
What's
Hey
going
welcome to
guys.
another
on?
session. Mic is on.
Hello.
Everything is on. Oh, great
Yes.
to have you guys again one more time here.
Good to be
How's
here.
everyone? How's everyone's week? How was everyone's day? How's everyone doing?
I feel like things have been hectic actually lately, but it's probably because it's well for us right now, it's the holiday time. By the time this is out, it's not going to be holidays anymore. But guys, we are recording during the holiday season, so it is extra busy, extra rushed right now.
Yeah, and I think for me it's like I am recording this and then I'm gonna go on a hiatus on a vacation. You guys are probably gonna see me like on the New Year's, but it's kind of going to, it's going to
Yeah.
be happening, right?
I'm glad that
It's
we're
great.
doing this. So, woohoo.
Yay,
Absolutely.
great. All right. So we've been discussing, Steph has been sharing a lot of her story. So on the last episode, Steph, you were sharing with us regarding your when you got married to Tony, right? So let's continue with that. So let's dive right into it without any further ado.
Sure. Sure. So, us getting married was kind of a little bit of it was different than usual because I think the leaders that we had were actually upset that they had nothing, they couldn't do anything about it because the order for us to get married it's, came directly from Macedo basically because of the situation of the church where Tony was helping at that time. It was, a very specific type of church, and the bishop that had formed that church had trained Tony to take care of that place and kind of like walk the walk, talk the talk for the type of community there, and just in general how to what really works for that place. So when that bishop had left and it got transferred to someone else, it kind of tanked. So that bishop let Bishop Macedo know that Tony's basically the only other guy that could probably go there right now and get things up again.
It did not
So
kind of tank. I'm sorry. It tanked. Like the
I was
place
being
went
nice.
from going like from I'm gonna put it out there. The place went from going from like a church that the entire day maybe had 100 people to 120 on a really really good time to having 6 people the whole day on a
Wow.
Sunday. So yeah, it
Yep.
tanked.
Yeah, so when he got word that it was Tony would be the best indicated one at the moment to go there, then he had to be married, not a single pastor. So the order came for us to get married. It felt like a dream come true. I felt like finally my like nightmare here is over because I thought that being a pastor's wife I'd get a certain type of freedom that I didn't have, funny enough, that I didn't have as uh an assistant slash worker for the church, especially someone
But
that was a candidate.
yeah, so let's take a little bit back, right? So can you guys talk about the huddles you guys went to be together? Because I know I came in just a little bit before you, like was in between when I think Tony was in Texas, and then he had come here. He had come back shortly to the Bronx and whatnot. Um, and then it was like I was in the room when there were conversations about you guys, and bringing up Tony, and like they had already asked Tony who he was interested in, and like it hadn't changed since he was an assistant. It hadn't changed when he was in Ecuador, and
Oh.
he still didn't change now. Where they were kind of getting like, this guy is gonna be stubborn, and no one we present to him, he's gonna accept. So it's
Are you
kind of like,
serious, Sarah?
yeah,
Oh
I'm
my
serious.
gosh.
So I was in the room when
Wow.
that happened, where they didn't say his name, but I kind of knew who they were talking about, right? Because they described him like kind of like his hairstyle, like his tone, but they really didn't use his name, and I'm like, I know who they're talking about. And then like they brought up the girl that he was interested as being you, where you didn't have the, what can I say, the criterias. You didn't check the boxes of a pastor's wife, like if a pastor's wife even has a box to check, right? um you know
Their boxes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, boxes, like, and it was mostly having to do with, it wasn't even its spirituality. It wasn't even like you were not spiritual enough. It wasn't because you were not servant enough. It had mostly to do with body type, right?
Absolutely. I got fat shamed so much in there for years and years and years. So, I have no doubt that they would put even something as, how can I say, like, superficial as someone's like body weight or their body type in the way of, or as justify it to be like a good enough excuse or a good enough reason to have someone break up with someone else or not marry someone else.
Yeah, but I know you guys did, we have chatted about this and like the huddles you guys went through, like, from like, can you guys share some light on like some of the highlights of the hoops you guys had to jump through to be together?
I'd let Tony start.
I mean, I guess me choosing the path of the pastor, right, is what really there was already a spotlight on us for reasons that we couldn't pinpoint, right? They had an obsession with our relationship, period. But me also wanting to be a pastor now, they start nitpicking people, right? They start zooming in on things that aren't even a big deal. So as soon as I left for a class to become a pastor, they told us if we had a love interest, the key word was had. That's done. Like if you're in this class, then you need to focus 100%. If they're for you, they're for you. And if not, not. So you need to let go, cut off all contact. And that was like our first trial. Okay. Even though we cared about each other, we were still kids, to be fair. I had just turned 18. She had just turned, what, 16, if I'm not mistaken?
17, I think.
Yeah, we're a year and a half apart. So we were still kids. This was our first official relationship. So our relationship got put to trial almost immediately, where just a few months into getting to know each other, now cut off all communication. And, if the feelings still survive, then they might be real. They might be real, and they put you in that situation where you're always second guessing yourself. So a lot of the times, like when I would think about Steph when I was gone, I have this internal turmoil. Okay, am I being emotional? Like, is me thinking about her gonna weaken my faith and cause me to give up? Or is this a real thing? And this is the girl for me. And regardless of distance is time, is this gonna remain? So there was always this internal tug of war, whether to trust myself or not when it comes to my love life. And with so much opposition, like it or not, you start to think a little bit, wait, if they have so much of an issue with us, is it really, am I really making the right choice here, or are they onto something that I'm missing? And they present themselves like that, such, right? I'm a man of God. I know what I'm talking about. When God speaks to me, then you need to listen. I'm like, well, I'm a man of God too, and He speaks to me too. And when it comes to things like my relationship, like I've had pastors tell me, yo, her body type, this, that, the other. And my point is, one, how do you know her body type?
Good answer.
One, we're being real. Two, is it going to be my wife or yours? Like,
Tony's
why
a
does
real
my
one.
wife need to
Always.
check your attractive boxes? Like, where's the real intention here? Like, as a pastor's wife, do you want like a nice piece of eye candy to look at from time to time when I'm around, or are you more worried about what she has to contribute to the work? Because there's a lot of mixed messages there. And
Exactly.
to the point that one pastor told me, oh, but she's heavy set, this, that, the other. And I'm like, okay, and I got feisty with
And to
him.
tell you the truth, in the thing is like, Steph, I've been around you. You're
She's
not even
not.
heavy set.
She's
You're
just Puerto
not.
Rican. She's thick in the right places, and I love that. That's the whole point. Like, hello, like.
Yeah, and like
Anyway,
Thank you,
like
guys.
the fat shaming wasn't warranted, and even if you were like
even if it was
fuller,
right,
it doesn't warrant, that doesn't justify the fact that of someone's spirituality being tied into what their
Right.
scale weight is. And then I'm like, and then sometimes like I used to look at some pastors and some pastors' wife like, do you guys own a mirror? Like
Yeah,
little
it's true.
like are you guys, do you guys actually own a mirror? But I can kind of attest to this because even in my house, right, my dad and my mom were always so obsessed with weight. Like as much as I, like when I was living with my parents, if I gained weight or if my body kind of like, like you go through puberty and your body kind of changed, and I already had like I went into puberty pretty early. I went into puberty like around when I was like 9 years old. So I already started getting like a booty. I started getting like, the body, like my chest
Curves.
started like curves.
Yeah.
And that, no, that became like, I became very sexualized inside of the institution where my dad wouldn't allow me to wear certain clothes. Like, and in Brazil, like when I remember, because I was still 9 years old, I was still in Brazil. Like when I used to go to school, because Brazil is a very humid and tropical country. So the school uniforms are usually like tights, short tights, and with a t-shirt, like mostly like a tank top, like almost like a tank top, like. And my dad used to have a fit, like with me wearing it, because like the shorts used to hug the body, but because they were breathable, like they were the only breathable material. And my dad used to be like, no, my daughter cannot wear that, like no, he was like, no, people are gonna talk, but look at her butt, like her butt
Yeah.
is like too big for, and then it kind of like where it kind of made me very conscientious of my body, where I was constantly trying to hide it. So in the last episode I told you, like I do have a problem with like accepting compliments, especially about my looks, where I feel uncomfortable because it's like it was so pointed out, like the things about my body that called attention. My husband, started giving me gifts, and then he bought me like, you guys know the brand BB, right? The BB brand. It was
Oh,
like
yes.
and their clothes are
I
very
say
like
bebe. Have I been saying it wrong this
bebe.
whole time?
No, it's I think it's bebe. It's however, it's like so
I know which one. Yeah.
their clothes are more like very like sexual, like you would wear it like the shirts and everything. And that in that time was what was in fashion. Right now I don't even think you can find it anymore. I don't even know what happened to the brand. But he bought me a dress, which was like a dress where I was completely I was shocked. I was like, you were expecting me to wear this? The I don't even think that there was enough material to cover my entire ass. I don't think that that's what the dress was. And he's like, I think you're gonna look beautiful in it. And I was like, I
Aw.
felt naked. But I was like, I still wore it, but I still felt like so uncomfortable, super uncomfortable, because like I had been always being told that my body was shameful, that my body brought sin, that my body caused men to sin, that I had to hide it all the time. That when my husband and then boyfriend was telling me like, no, you should wear this. I think you would look beautiful in it. For me, was like, oh my god, like you want me to like men to kind of look at me in the street, and like the complete opposite happened. Nobody was looking at me. Like nobody was looking at me. I blended in so well. Like, but then afterwards, like after doing that and feeling super uncomfortable, I started wearing the dress as kind of like a shirt.
Oh.
Because like
With
I
like
just
leggings
wouldn't.
under.
Yeah, with leggings or over jeans. For me it just felt better, right? um Only because of that. But those are kind of the things that women have to go through. We're gonna have an episode talking about, the
Yeah.
difference of treatment between men and women inside of this institution, and
The
how they make
fundamentalism in
the
there.
fundamental, yeah, the higher, the what do you call it, the men's being saying
Patriarchy.
patriarchy, and men saying no, like a man can do this but a woman cannot, or however it is, the excuses that they
Yeah.
make.
I could not. I'm so happy I ended up with Tony because Tony is like you're probably the biggest feminist I know personally. You see Tony there, but he is all for like girls be doing, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel beautiful. He is against the patriarchy. He is like, I love it.
I was raised by all women, so like that impacted me as a man, where I'm able to see like the female struggle and how that affects, their self-esteem and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm one of that. I don't feel that as a husband I own my wife. That for me is
Mhm.
bullshit. I want my wife to live the fullest, most happiest version of her life possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
add on, not take away, because I'm insecure that she's getting too much into this or building too much of a career, or having too many connections with friends or family. I'm not one of those guys at all.
Yep.
I want her to live a full life and be married, not
Yep.
one or the other, which is a lot of men have that issue,
I
right? So
know.
Yeah.
I know.
yeah, that's why I
Well,
never fit in that place, and
I
they couldn't
got a good
understand
one,
my
guys.
mindset because I couldn't understand that macho just,
mhm.
rule with the iron fist, do as I say, and serve and live for me. I don't agree with
Yeah.
that. Never
I
have.
And it's kind of the things also I kind of fell in love with my husband as well, because my husband and I, we met actually inside of the institution as well. And I think that drew me to him, and like helped me realize like this is the person, this is my person, was the simple fact, kind of like you, Anthony. He didn't try to change me. He didn't, as a matter of fact, he kind of like just tell like, no, you go do it. Like I remember I used to come home and like, I was fighting for a promotion, or I wanted to, because I'm very like driven, like very like, at work, that's kind of like where I dove into my like my freedom. And at work I was like, I used to come home like very frustrated because I had put in like so much effort, into the work. And he's like, you know what, F that, go back to your boss and say like, you give me this while I'm walking out. But I'm like, well, but if I walk out, I'm not gonna have a job. He's like, I got you, you go ahead and you
Oh,
do
that's
it. And
beautiful.
he's like, he used to be, behind me. Like he's the reason why I went to college and I graduated, because he was like by my side. He's like, no, no, keep going, keep, there were sometimes I was working two jobs. I was, but he was kind of like my motivated, like, oh, if you want to quit one of your jobs, and I will make up the money for you, kind of. He gave me that backbone support for me to continue striving and going forward with like the career path I wanted. I had also done like career shift as well, where he's like, you know what, if that's not working out for you, go ahead and try something else. And we kind of always been like that with one another. And the other thing is like, he doesn't feel insecure around me. Like we both like, he's like, I have my woman. If men is gonna look at it that this is like you're with me and I'm secure with what
Right.
we have, I don't feel insecure. If someone says like, if a guy says something like, you have a beautiful wife, he's like, I know what I got, thank you, but I know what I got. She's coming home to me. Kind of those things, kind of that doesn't take away or doesn't make you feel like, you have to walk on eggshells with your partner, because you
I love
you have
that.
to you have to deal with their insecurities as well. And I think that
Yeah,
that's great that there are men with those mindset. I think my husband
me too.
and you, Tony, are gonna get along pretty well, because you
We
guys
need
have
to
a lot of
double
stuff.
date.
Yeah,
We need to do
absolutely.
something together. But
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, I'm so happy for you, Sarah, because like we deserve nothing less.
Of
And
course.
Tony, is something like similar things have happened with us too, where like guys have told Tony, your wife is beautiful, like she's so beautiful. And he doesn't get upset. He's like, I know what I have and all of that stuff. So like I
and
love it.
and that builds for us women, right, knowing that our significant other, our husband, or whoever's out by our side, they kind of understand that we will attract attention. But at the
Yeah,
end of the day, if we choose them every single day, it's like, it's okay. Like,
yeah,
those are kind of the things that doesn't help. Like, I think sometimes women kind of like, we hu- we tone down so that we can let our
absolutely.
partner shine. But when our partners let us shine, together, and they're confident, that just builds our confidence as well.
It's true.
Yeah.
I
Alrighty,
love you, Tony.
amazing. I feel like the third wheel in this
I'm
podcast today.
I'm
sorry.
Like,
sorry,
it's like,
Sarah.
We need to have
It
your husband as
happens.
a
I'm
guest
so
one of these
sorry.
oh,
days.
my husband will never appear. He's not. He will. He already said, I am not joining this podcast.
That's
Well, I'm
So
glad
okay
he
yeah.
as long as
supports
he's
you.
But
supportive,
I
right?
can
And
definitely, I
that's the
can
whole
definitely
thing.
tell you, like the parts where he kind of had enough with, also with the institution, when we discuss kind of a different things. And I would definitely share his perspective, and those things that I saw him do it. I was like, yeah,
Yes.
like I was by his side. I was like, whoa, okay, good. I didn't see that from someone. And he was kind of a rebel too. He was like, when I started dating him, he was viewed as kind of the what do you call it, the papi chulo of the church, where
Oh my, the
He was Mr.
um
playboy.
Casanova,
the
Mr.
yeah, the Casanova,
Casanova.
like nobody steer clear, because he had a sports car. He had
Ah.
a sports Mercedes, and he used to show up
Mm.
to the Sunday church. And then it was funny enough, you know what called the most attention to him, and I laughed so hard on this day. Like he used to come in on Sunday service, and he used to be like, full of himself. Like you
Ah.
could see, like, full of himself, right? And then, like, as soon as he walked in, like the women, like some of the women that were interested in him, all looking and where he was gonna sit. And he used to sit and then put a Bible. He used to sit right on the corner, and he used to sit next to an old lady every single time. Like there was always a person like to his left or to his right, but he used to sit on the last year, and then have like an open seat next to where he used to put his Bible, right?
Huh.
And then here comes like a girl trying to, shoot her shot at him. And I used to watch this like every Wednesday and every Sunday. You always used to happen, right? And I really didn't realize what was going on, because I always used to feel like the girl used to leave defeated after talking to him. And then one day I kind of asked him, like, I was like, what were you telling those girls when they came to sit next to you? And then he's like, when? I'm like, well, every single time you came for either Wednesday service or Sunday service, you used to sit down either next to an old lady or an old person, or there was always someone next to you, and there was always an open seat, right? And then someone used to be like, oh, can I sit here? And your Bible was always there, because I always noticed. I was always like people watching, and I used to watch him. And the girls used to be like walking away as if, like, to like they used to have a stank face. And he's like, oh, okay. I used to tell them that I was waiting for my future wife to sit there, and they were
Oh
not the
my
ones.
god.
I was like,
Savage.
Very
Oh
well.
my
Very well. Well
gosh.
I
played.
was
Well
like,
played.
Did
wow.
he
I
let
was
you
like,
sit down next to him one day?
yeah, I eventually sat down next to him, but for him was kind of like I turned him down, like, several times before
Wow.
we started dating. And for us, the way we started dating was we went on a blind date. So I was in the church, and he was also in the church, and then another, mutual friend of ours was like, "Oh, I'm going to lunch with someone after
You're
church." And I was
kidding.
like, "Oh, okay, great. It's fine." And I was actually at Bible school. I was teaching at Bible school. I was with the kids. I was with like the it wasn't the babies, like was the between the 2 year olds to 3 years old. And there was like this little girl that always wanted to be on like wanted to be carried.
Oh.
And it was funny enough that I was with her with this our significant other friend of ours. And she was like, "Oh, I'm coming. If my friend if someone comes asking for me, just tell him to wait." And I was there, and then in he walks, right, from the service, and he's like, "Oh, hi." And I'm like, "Oh, hi." He's like, "Oh, so you got married and you have a daughter?" I quickly dropped the kid.
Oh!
No.
I was like, "No, this is not my kid." Like, no, like a little girl, time to cat down. Like, no, this is not my daughter. Like,
How
I'm
they used to
taking
say
care of
back in
her.
the day, sal. That kid
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
flew that.
Yeah. So then
Oh
he
my
was like,
god.
and then I didn't realize it was him. And then my friend was like, "Oh no, yeah. So let's go." And then eventually my friend's like, "You know what? Drop me off like at my house. I'm not going anymore." And he's like, "Oh, Sarah, you can go to lunch with him." And then that's how we started. We started off as like, friends, and then we progressed from there. Eventually he started growing on me after so many no's. He's like, I finally got it. Yes. He definitely like
He was
he,
persistent.
he was persistent. He was definitely I would give that to him. And it took like about 2 years for me to kind of say, okay, I'm fine. I'm ready to date you. It was
Mhm.
funny because even the way we started dating was super organic as well, where he's like, we've been going out like this, like I've been inviting you out, you've been saying yes, what are we? I'm like, You haven't asked me anything yet." He's like, "Well, I don't know if you're gonna say yes." I'm like, "Just try it." And then we just started like, he's like, "Would you like to be my girlfriend?"
Oh,
And we kind of just started like that, and we
I
just took it
love
from there.
it.
Yeah. So
That's
that's the
so
kind of
fun.
story. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So this podcast, guys, is a love story podcast. It's like,
Obviously, it has turned into a love story podcast
yeah,
episode. Yes.
yeah. My husband is never gonna appear. Don't even ask. He's not gonna be a guest in our podcast. He already turned me down. He's like, don't even show
Oh
me a
no.
contract. I don't want to. I don't want to hear it.
It's because he hasn't seen it yet. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Eventually,
He
he
wore you
will.
down after 2 years. Maybe we might wear
We'll
him
wear
down.
him down.
After
You never
Yes.
know.
Yes,
I like it.
I guess hope is the last thing that fades.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a social media person either, so even finding him on social media is a hassle
Mhm.
Oh my
on those.
gosh.
But yeah, so that is it. So then you guys started dating, you guys went through the huddles, right? And then you guys eventually got married. Macedo, gave the his stamp of approval, or maybe it wasn't basically a stamp of approval, it was a pressure of approval.
Yeah,
Of
his
That's
hand
just,
was
true.
kind of forced, right? And
yeah.
it made the most sense to go that route. So there was nothing anybody could do about it, period.
Yep. And then you guys eventually got married. How was the wedding like? So how was the preparation for the wedding? Was like kind of the wedding of your dreams, of like,
No way. It was super rushed. Like we had, I want to say 5 weeks to prepare everything or less. I may be giving too much credit there,
I think it was
but
5 weeks exactly, yeah.
5 weeks. Tony felt some sort of pressure to set the date for closer rather than later because there was this run-on theme in his life where like things would get taken back. Pastors would give.
the carpet would be
Yep.
pulled from under you all the time?
Exactly. And so something that I've always stayed with is that years earlier when Tony had first asked me to be his girlfriend, it was on May 9th of 2009. And then when we got approval for our marriage in 2015, it was the perfect time to get married on May 9th. Like it would have been so cute to get married on the anniversary of us being boyfriend girlfriend, but instead we got married May 2nd, 1 week before, and it doesn't feel right. So I don't know. I told him already I want to do like a redo of our wedding,
Oh, we should do
and
renew our vows. Like this,
yes,
don't
I
we?
want to renew.
We should plan it. I've always wanted to renew my vow and get a do over.
Yes, I want to do over, and I want it to be on May 9th this time. And
Okay.
even Tony, he a few years ago he got our anniversary tatted on him, and I told
Okay.
him use May 9th, please. I don't want the May 2nd because it was always supposed to be May 9th. But I'm sorry. I'm glad I let that out. I needed to let that out. I've never
I
told
mean,
anyone
it's
that.
the same. I think it falls kind of the same week, or like they're probably a week apart, but you can
It's
put it.
exactly 1 week apart. Yeah,
So
apart.
then it's
Yeah.
like kind of like, yeah, go with May 9th and run with it.
Yeah, yeah. So, we had, it was very rushed and it was our money, our like very non-existent money, by the way. Like we've had very little resources. I'm
No
grateful for
savings, right? Because you guys were giving everything away, right?
no savings. I
No
wasn't getting
savings.
paid enough
Like
to
I
have
don't even think
savings.
Anthony, didn't you even get any savings?
So here's the thing. So I was saving for about a year, right? And it didn't amount to much, right? I had a couple bucks in my savings account, but you know, the way our marriage got approved, they already knew that we were going to end up getting married, but they continued to put pressure on us as if we weren't. So they kind of told me, hey, you guys been dating for 5 years. It's time for you to get revolted, go participate in this campaign. Is all or nothing, this, that, the other. So all the savings that I had for the wedding went into an envelope, which as soon as, that envelope for the campaign was done, a couple of days later, we get the approval, but that was already in motion before the
Look at
campaign
that.
started. And that's, and then the
Wow.
funny thing about that, they have the pastor sometimes record their testimonies for the therapy of love, right? To play for all the single pastors or potential pastors to watch and see how even the single pastors do it to get married. It's all just to get them to stay
A gimmick.
dedicated. Yeah, to stay focused. It's in their power to marry anybody they want, pretty much whenever they want. They choose to hold those things back to align with the campaigns for a purpose. Like
And I think that they hold that on the auxiliaries head, um to beat them into submission. Like that's kind of your ultimate goal, right? Marrying the person that you're interested in, and whatnot. And that is kind of like, it's getting you to submit to the cause. Like, if I do everything right, if I do all of these things, I'm gonna get the girl that I've been in love with, right? And then like you guys are kind of like the love story that kind of worked out, right? Because I think we've discussed this, that
Hmm.
you know I'm a person, I'm a people watcher. There's some marriages that you guys chose each other, right? But there's some marriages inside of the church that they haven't chosen each other, they were chosen for each
Hmm.
other,
It was
right?
almost
Right.
They didn't,
arranged.
yeah. And
Arranged.
actually, like, it's funny because, like, I told you guys that I went to the church a couple of weeks ago, right, just to scout, right? And then
No
like
judgment.
we no, no, no. I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't even care if you judge me or not. I just went in. My husband still goes on and off, so it's fine. Like, I
Gotcha.
was I was more going with him, but I kind of like got the stamp of like, don't come back, right? Like, was my conscience like, Sarah, why do you do this to yourself? You like, do you like living in pain? Like, do you like struggling? um it was, I would discuss kind of like what was it walking back at probably another episode. But basically is, we met up with one friend of ours that was in that branch, and now we found out that he became an auxiliary pastor. Now he's 40 years old now, so he's in his 40, which is kind of like,
That's rare.
yeah, no, that's
Rare.
desperation. That's called recruitment
That
is getting
that's another
dire,
word
desperate.
for it.
It's getting
Yeah,
crazy.
it's rare, right? Which I haven't, it's not unheard of, but now it's getting more common, right? So he's 40 years old. He's there sitting as an auxiliary. And then he kind of like, we got into the conversation, and then my husband's like, "Oh, are you dating anybody?" He's like, "Yeah, I met this girl. She's from the Bronx. She's like, and then like me, like, I cannot like, I wish that I could keep a poker face. This is the reason why I don't play poker, because like I close my mouth, but then my face becomes my subtitles, right? So I'm
Hmm.
looking at him and looking at his facial expression, and I'm like sitting like, and I'm like, "So how long have you guys been dating?" "Oh no, we just started talking to one another. She's a little bit younger than I am, blah blah blah." And blah blah blah. Long story short was, he didn't seem too enthusiastic about the relationship, right? He didn't
Hmm.
seem too
Okay.
enthused about the relationship. So I turned to, like, after he leaves, I turned to my husband. I was like, it's not it's
It
not gonna
ain't
work
gonna work
out.
out.
It ain't gonna work out. But I was
They
like,
might
he's
even get
40.
married, but it won't.
Yeah, they may
It's
even
a.
get married, because like he's getting to an age where the church cannot afford having him single, where they're
Hmm.
gonna push him to like make to like, this is the one. And then I said also, like, his pool choice is not really like a lot. Like, the younger girls, if he's thinking about like getting a younger girl, they're not gonna go for him. For him, he's gonna be too old. No matter how much of an
Right.
auxiliary you are, they're not gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna marry you because you're a pastor." Like, they're like, of course, there's some girls that'll be like, No, no, I'll wait for the next bus," right?
And realistically, we know too, like somebody that enters at the age of 40 is not seen as an equal.
Mm-mm.
Like other pastors and bishops in his age bracket will not view him as a pastor. He would forever
No.
be branded like that workhorse kind of auxiliary, kind of sent to.
And he may stay as an auxiliary for many, many, many years, because like you have to climb the ladder of hierarchy. And like, so just so for our viewers to understand, right? So in the hierarchy, you start as an auxiliary, you actually start as a helper, then you become an auxiliary pastor, and you go through those motions, right? Then you become a consecrated pastor. No, you become like a pastor. That's when you like a pastor. And then you become a consecrated pastor, which is like the pastor that you like, they go through a consecration, which is like becoming rarer and rarer at here. And then you become like, after years, then you might even become a bishop. Like, they don't consecrate bishops as often as they used to in the past. Like, I don't even know any American pastors that became bishops here in the
There
US
aren't
at all,
any except for David. There
except for
aren't any.
David. Yeah, yeah, David, I think, was the only
And
one that.
his situation is special. Like It's
Yeah.
definitely justified because his dad is the whole reason why the church is here. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
but other than that, there are no
and
more
most likely
things in
he was
high
probably
places
like
like
in the
that.
90s. It was when he was consecrated. So you guys can do the math. Like it was many years ago. When my dad was consecrated bishop was also in the 90s. And then as they got into the 2000, it didn't become as often. I think I read it like in South Africa, I think they just consecrated one of the very first African bishops in
Wow.
South Africa. Like I think that there was there another one? I don't recall, but I think I read it somewhere that they it was the first African, like South African bishop, and they have been in South Africa for many years, as well, right?
I think they're
Like,
very reluctant to give that title away at this point because so many of them
mhm.
have left that the title bishop holds so much weight even after they leave that they open their own church already with a mass
Yeah,
following because they have that reputation. I think they're super selective now with you have to know a guy basically. I noticed all the bishops getting consecrated towards the end there were good friends of the person doing the consecrating. Like
yeah,
it was
Yeah.
a favorites game. It wasn't
and
even anything
yeah,
special anymore.
and here in the US, like at least from the English branch, right? Because I don't see a lot of consecrations happening in the Spanish branch for bishops, but I do know that in the English branch here, there were a couple of pastors that my time that they eventually got consecrated as bishop. Um, they basically like to shut them
Really?
up. Yeah, it was basically to like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna make you a bishop. But they have the bishop consecration, but they're treated like any other pastor. They don't
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
have the respect. They don't have the full respect of,
It's true.
in the hierarchy, when they do have all of that, right? So therefore it's like, you know, you can definitely tell like the difference. You can definitely tell like a respected bishop in the in this institution and one that was consecrated bishop with they're like, "Pff, and you are
That's
who you
probably one
telling
of the
me?"
worst positions to be in. In my, it might be a hot take, but a bishop position with no respect, the demand on you, right, and the level that they can burn you at that height
Yeah.
is a whole
Yep.
nother level, right? Like they will literally send you to an undesirable state or country and blame the failure of that place all on you,
On
and then
you.
send you to the abyss of the earth. Like
Yeah, yeah, and like like my brother, right? So my brother is a pastor. He's actually an auxiliary pastor. He has never been consecrated, so he has
mm,
never moved up the
Wow.
ladder of hierarchy at all. And it's like and I kind of like I take jabs of my brother, right? Because like when I do see like on social media someone that was close to our circle group being consecrated, I take a picture and I send it to him and like so when's gonna happen? Like another decade? And my
Yeah.
brother doesn't really respond like to that. I'm like, you should be like ashamed of yourself because like everyone else is like passing you by and you like don't get any recognition. And my brother's like, oh, I look to God. I don't look at these things and whatnot. But I'm like, but
that's
dude,
bullshit, though. That's
you've
yeah.
been
Come
over
on.
like you're going on 20 years as an auxiliary pastor. You're going on 20
He's been
years.
laying hands on people since he was like barely double digits in age. Like,
He was 10 years
if
old
that
when he was
doesn't,
laying.
you know what I'm saying? If that doesn't
Yeah.
Wow.
constitute a consecration, like what qualifies it in that place? You
Yeah,
know,
and he's a year away from 40. So you guys can do the math,
Yeah,
Like,
and for those that don't know your brother, and I don't really know him like that either, but I did live briefly, funny enough, with your brother and his wife when we were in California, and I only have good things to say about him. So it's not even like, oh, he's
that's the problem.
older. That's like he's actually a good
He's too
guy,
much of
like,
a good guy for the environment. You know what
yep.
I mean? Like the good
Hmm.
guys, they are the auxiliary pastors forever, and then the aggressive,
Yeah,
like authoritarian types are the ones that are
the
the leaders.
assholes are the ones
Like
that
Yeah.
get
they're not
consecrated.
leaders, they're just
Yeah,
dictators.
they're just pushovers. They're like
Yeah, a
bullies.
dictator
They're
is
just the
not a
bullies.
leader. There's a
And then
big
like
difference.
and I kind of like already kind of, have my own perception as to why my brother it has never been consecrated. It's basically because his wife is not wifely material per se. and
Leave that
it's
one
known for
alone.
a fact. Yeah. What the guys don't
Leave
want to
that
talk.
one alone.
I
Yeah, I'm
mean,
just gonna shut up.
I can take all the heat. I can definitely say it, and it's like I know, like
I mean, I
she's
have
being stabbed.
stories,
I mean it,
But
but
let's
but
get back
I'll save that.
to the
I'll save
story
that.
because if not,
like
yeah,
yeah, Tony's like I
let,
don't want
let's
no
leave her
smoke.
story
I
alone.
don't
Let's
want
get back to
problems.
Steph's story. Yeah,
Yeah,
We'll
but
do.
because
I'll share with you guys her story. Like her story. She's a twin, right? And like I think like just to get she's a twin, right? And they like when her sister got married to like this pastor where he was kind of like the celebrity pastor at the time in the US, they put them against each other where the guy had to choose between the two sisters.
That's so
Like,
fucked up.
right?
That's
what
So
is this?
disgusting.
The Bible now? Like,
and I kind
what
of like
they're having the
yeah,
sisters
and
compete
then
against each other to marry
The Old
somebody?
exactly.
Testament.
So by this guy choosing her sister automatically made her unholy
Mm-hmm.
because he
It was
had to
second
say
fiddle at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like when he had to kind of explain to why did you choose her sister and not her, he had to say like, oh, I felt like her sister was more spiritual than her, so automatically he burned her completely, like without
Forever.
even and I don't think that that was his intent. Was just basically he could have said I felt like he could have said like more of like a human being, like I felt more of a connection with her
With this
sister
one. Mm-hmm.
than with the other one, because it would have been
They wouldn't have
but then
taken that answer. That wouldn't have
they
been good
wouldn't,
enough.
because then here comes the tricky part. Oh, so you're sentimental.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's the
you're
first thing that crossed my
right.
mind. You can't
Like
say
you
it that way
yeah,
because it
You're
would
being
backfire.
emotional.
you're leading with your heart, you're not leading with your head, right? You're leading with your heart. So like no, this is not going to work out. So he had to go with the answer that checked the box, right? Oh, it's
Right.
holy, she's holier than her. And it basically I like I am not a holy expert, I'm not at all, but I don't feel like there was anything wrong with my sister-in-law at all. Like
Mhm.
she has her own personality and her sister has a different personality, and that's that. But uh, you know automatically stamp it marked her for years, like
Yeah,
on those.
when I didn't know
And
that.
that's it, and that's my point of view, right? Because this is like outsider looking in, where this is like this was never said out loud, but this is
Yeah.
my my perception.
Yeah, like I had a situation with your sister-in-law before, and when you told me this story, it helped me empathize so much more with her and sympathize with the situation, because I'm like, who knows where I'd be too if like years and years passed by and I felt like this deep ingrained like I don't know how she feels inside, but knowing the way the system is in there, hearing something like that can really like fuck you up forever, because that's literally what they measure you by in there. So
Yeah.
if you're deemed as someone like lesser than or not spiritual enough, or like you were saying, not holy enough, and you're a person that does work hard, that does do things and get things done, because she would do a lot for the church and get a lot of things done, like absolutely.
If the church
So
told her to jump off a bridge, I'm sure she would. I'm sure she would. I would have no doubts about it.
it sucks that like people that are so loyal and good hearted towards church, like we end up getting that short end of the stick. Like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and it kind of like it helps to everyone puts into perspective. Like I said, like
exactly.
no one's is an angel, like but I know she has her faults and whatnot. But it's like
We all do.
you create that sisterly rivalry that remains for everyone that sees her. Oh, she's the sister that didn't get chosen.
No one should go through that. No
It's
one
it's,
should
like-
go
it's
through
almost like the Bible story Leah and Rachel, right?
That's what
Leah
I
and
think Tony
Rachel.
was referencing. Yeah.
It's like the and then Jacob was like, "Oh, you ain't the one. I still gonna work another 7 years for your sister, right?" And then
Mhm.
she got shunned to the
Ugh,
side. But
Hmm.
it's kind of like the same kind of story. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's get back to like you guys, right? So you guys, finally get married. You guys have to fund all of this out of your own pocket, and then you guys finally
Yes.
get married.
Yes. Thankfully, people helped out a lot, like with their physical labor too, to help decorate the church. A lot of people did help monetarily. It wasn't like a crazy amount, but it was enough to have a sweet ceremony. And that's all I wanted. I wasn't adamant, anyways, about having this big, huge wedding. I just wanted to get married and be with him. Like, I finally wanted to seal the deal. It had been years. So we got married. Our honeymoon was not a luxurious honeymoon at all. We stayed in New York City, but we basically did all the touristy stuff, because even being born and raised in your city, we were never tourists in our own city. Like, we hadn't
Mm-hmm.
seen a bunch of like landmarks and stuff in our area, so we decided to, spend our honeymoon doing that. And we had, like, I think 2 days or 3 days, and then we had to go to Texas because that's where Tony was stationed. So now this is where my ministry began, like, as a pastor's wife. And when I got there, honestly, my experience is, it's a lot better than a lot of other wives when they first got married and got put in the fire. Because honestly, when I arrived, thankfully, the bishop in place, his wife was super sweet, super nice to me. The other wives also were very nice to me. So it was actually like a rare situation where things were good. The first couple months, there were little things here and there, like the apartment didn't have food. All the food was expired. There were a lot of things missing from the apartment, and the person that had been in that apartment was a bishop's wife. So great example they set for me there.
And then can
um
you talk about the rule that they have, right? So like so the houses are being provided by the church. So they do have like kind of a rule that if someone is moving out, they need to replace kind of like the
Everything.
sheets, everything, leave some food behind or leave an entire month's worth of food behind, pots and
Hmm.
pans. How did you find kind of the situation? Like you already said the food was expired, so.
Yeah, all the food was expired, and we didn't have driver license yet, and we didn't have a car. So, and we were in Texas, and in Texas, you have to drive to get anywhere, to get anything. So it sucked that didn't have any food. We didn't have any bed sheets. We just had a quilt. There was no bed sheets under there. So it was like little things that I had been trained so hard on as a candidate, to make sure that I had certain things done when I left the apartment, when I, like the criteria and certain rules that you have to follow when you move in somewhere, when you move out. And so it was very like, yeah, it was shocking for me, honestly, when I went in and I'm like, oh, this is not at all the criteria I show that I have to pee. So,
Mhm.
and then as years go by, I realized that not everyone is subject to that same criteria. It depends, obviously, what position you hold
Yeah.
and who you are.
And the rule
A
only
lot of
applies to
times,
some and not the others, like,
the rule, oh,
and God forbid that if you don't follow the rules and then it's someone that, comes to replace you, that is where the rule doesn't apply to them, but it applied to you, what they're gonna do. Because it's like a Shark Tank.
exactly. I mean, the rule will always apply to the lower hierarchy people that are the brokest, the people with the least resources. And so that's what really sucks, because you don't have any resources at all and you're expected to. Do you know how much money it is to replace everything? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Because on top of that, they're picky about, like, oh, it has to be a good brand. It has to be this thread
Mhm.
count. It has to be. So I never had like really nice things my whole life growing up, the way I did. And it's crazy how, like, as a pastor's wife, where we were told that we were going to have a life where, like, oh, you may never have nice things or anything like that. Some, like, the wives around me had way nicer things, and than I had growing up, because like the standard was so high in there, honestly.
Yep.
So um, so yeah, so that was when we first got there. And a few months passed by. I would say when we would get together for Gollywood events, we would get together with Spanish, which was a big deal because Spanish and English, for the most part, was divided except for in Gollywood. And I started learning more about the politics between the wives in the Spanish, because in the Spanish, there was a lot more wives. There was a lot more of that kind of like environment. Um, Amongst us in English, there was only like 5 or 6 of us, and we were all like really nice and cute with each other. So like we didn't have that going on. But then like I would see that in the Spanish side, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm learning to play the game. I lived with a Spanish wife Spanish wife, a wife from the Spanish side and a pastor from the Spanish side. So even though we were in English, we did share a house with
Mhm.
someone
And
from the
how
Spanish
was that
side.
communal living? How was did you guys have any bad experience with communal living?
I did with her husband, but not with
Okay.
her. Her husband was an asshole. He was very picky about the stupidest things for no reason, like how the eggs were cut up for lunch. He always liked to have like boiled eggs on the side with lunch. And if it wasn't sliced perfectly, if the egg like looked weird in any way, like send it back type of
And
energy.
he
And
was,
you were the one cutting up the eggs for someone else's husband?
I mean, we would take turns or sometimes cook together. Yeah.
and that guy was like, I have a lot of personal history with that guy because I was his auxiliary at one point.
Got you.
So now, like, he was a interesting personality because he was that kind of pastor that was very charismatic and came across as helpful, but the way and the intention behind it, like you could tell he's just trying to position himself in a place that you owe him a favor, or he's trying to be looked
Got
at
you.
as Mr. Hero. But
He's gonna come and collect. He's gonna collect
yeah, like
on the
it was
bounty.
always, he's always trying to be, oh, don't worry about it, guys, I'll take care of this, but then he'll be an extra asshole tomorrow with some other things. So it's always like, it was like a very toxic kind of relationship where, yeah, he's a great guy, but also, is he?
Mhm.
Because like you
Right.
don't know how to
That
feel
happens a
about
lot
him
in
because
there.
you
Yeah,
can't
he
cancel out
always
all
came
the
with the
good.
ulterior motive. He always came with an ulterior
It's a
motive.
good
Yeah,
way to put it,
and
yeah.
there's a lot of like archetypes of pastors like that in there, like where you don't really know how to feel about them because they seem like a really good person, but also
He'll be the first
you
one to.
their true colors show in under certain scenarios, and
Yep.
you just know I can't be real with that person.
And it's
Yeah.
kind of like so basically like it creates it's a good point to touch right here because the church creates these hierarchies where people are coming from the bottom and they need to climb this social ladder, which is an untold social ladder with everyone's supposed to be equal, but not everyone is really equal once you really start looking at it. What people are going to
Exactly.
start redoing is how can I climb up the ladder? So what they're going to start doing is they're going to start snitching, they're going to start creating stories or creating
Mhm.
narratives to kind of like, oh, and then once they start reporting these bad, like it's almost like they watch, like you are being watched, like everything you do,
Absolutely.
like the way you clean, like if you didn't clean the pots well because maybe like you were in a hurry, that the wife is going to use that against you to go to like the wife in charge and say Steph didn't, she's not a good cleaner, she's like dirty, and then that will give her like points in getting probably moving up the ladder, or this person is reporting
Yeah.
this, right? So you kind of create that whole environment where people are going to start making up stuff about each other just to like see how quickly they can climb on that social ladder. Because I've been like, there has been times where you know and I can attest to this where it has happened with my parents where they used me as kind of the way to get at my parents to kind of like to basically tarnish my parents reputation inside of the church, because they were saying, oh, his daughter did this and that, and then the bishop in charge just took that without investigating, ran with it,
Yeah.
like demoted my dad, sent my dad somewhere, or did something where my parents had to come back and kind of prove. Like I think one of the biggest story that I can share was when my mom was accused of adultery. um
Oh my gosh, seriously?
yeah. So there was
Never
an
heard.
anonymous letter sent to this bishop, to the bishop that was taking care of um that country, right? It was anonymous letter sent accusing my mom of sleeping with the auxiliary pastors. So my mom was always very like giving. So if we had like leftover food or anything, she used to put it into like these containers and then share it with auxiliary pastors, because she knew that the auxiliary pastors were like unfed. you
Hungry.
you
Yeah.
guys were like famished, right? So the auxiliary pastors were always very thankful. They used to refer to my mom as like mom and whatnot. And my mom really didn't chit chat with them at all. My mom used to be like, here it is, blah blah blah. And that's where the kind of the rumor came in that my mom was kind of having an affair with one of these auxiliaries. Long story short was a meeting was made, and it was kind of like a national meeting, meaning there is like meetings like locally, and these ones like was nationwide, meaning all the pastors from that country came to that meeting. So it was a room filled with about 100 or 120 pastors, right? My mom was called to the front, and she was called all names that an adulteress could be called. And my mom was like, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And I remember this vividly because that was the meeting that happened. I was not there, but when I came home, this bishop was in my house, in my brother's room, calling my mom an adulteress, like telling her to confess, you an adulteress. I know you did it. Here's
Oh
the
my
letter that proves it. And
gosh.
he threw the letter at my mom. Like my dad kind of tried to, like, say, like, Sarah, go to the side, you're not allowed on the side. But I just went around the house, and I was like eavesdropping because I wanted to see what's happening. This is my mother, you're talking like this. And then the other thing that made it even worse was that my dad is like, I believe my wife. I'm not leaving her. Like, my dad stood by my mom, because if my dad would have said, oh, she's an adulteress, I don't want this wife anymore, my mom and my brother and I would be sent packing, and no
Hmm.
one would know what would happen to us, right? It wouldn't be, and then my
Wow.
my dad would be marrying someone else, and that would be it.
By
They
the
would be
next
getting
day,
by
probably.
the next day,
Which
right?
we've seen situations like that.
Yeah, and then you created kind of a whole atmosphere in my house where my dad was kind of like, is this, but my dad really kind of, it messes with the man's head
It
regardless,
does.
like,
It
because
would,
Hmm.
no
yeah.
matter no matter how many ways you put it, like, it's going to mess with your head, when you hear about infidelity and whatnot. But I think my parents had a good relationship, like you and Tony have it, a good dynamic that they kind of trusted each other. And my mom was like completely crushed. She wasn't allowed to do like the extra activities or their like work with what she was working, which was mostly like with the accounting of the church and whatnot. She was completely banned from it for like weeks. So my mom started like, so my mom, like, I think my mom was really, really good at, like, she already knew the politics, right? So you kind of, like, Steph, you said, she knew how to play the games of politics. So she took that letter, and then my mom does this so well. And I like, she used to keep every piece of, because back in the day they used to communicate via letter. So if a wife sent her a letter or gave her something, she used to keep those. My mom used to have a luggage filled with documents, filled, and
Good.
I don't even know what documents that were in
Start
there.
comparing those handwritings. I see where she's
That's what
going
my
with
mom
this.
did. My mom compared her handwriting, because my mom is like, this handwriting looks very
Familiar.
similar, familiar. Come to find out that this wife was another bishop's wife, where
Ah,
later on got found out that her husband was cheating on her.
oh my God. You see, it came back to her.
And she wasn't
She's
happy
lying.
that my parents were in a church that she wanted her husband to be in, and she created the entire situation. Now, her husband was already demoted. He was like, I think he was stripped of his title as a bishop as well, and he was putting as a pastor, because there was also other rumors and other things that were going on where he was being accused of pedophilia
Oh
as
Mm.
my
well.
God.
So therefore, like, they demoted him and whatnot, and then she decided to create all of this. So she's like, her mentality is, if my husband is suffering, I'm going to bring someone else with me with the same rumors, so that
Horrible.
it's like kind of like shows that, you know. But then my mom went back. I remember that my mom went back, and she walked into this bishop's office, and he's like, I don't want to talk to you. My mom's like, you're going to listen to me, because you accused me of something that I didn't do, and you embarrassed me in front of an entire 120 pastors, where everyone's thinking that I am an adulteress. So you are going to listen to me. Here's the
Wow. She
letter.
got
Here,
spicy.
yeah, she's like,
Good.
here's the letter. And she's like, and by the way, this letter, this lady is talking just as bad about you. Here it is. Because she had tea, where this wife was like talking bad about this bishop, the higher up, to get
Oh
my
my
mom on her
God.
side. So my mom is like, you think I'm stupid? Like she thinks I'm stupid, but here it is. Like compare the letters, because like you just committed an injustice. Like I'm telling you, like you like how do you just believe on an anonymous letter without even investigating? And then
Hmm.
like you would think that this bishop would be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna apologize in
No.
public. He used some proverbs from the book of Proverbs that the father reprehends the child that he loves. Like I forgot what proverb it is, but it's in Proverbs.
Religious
And
bypassing at its finest.
Yep.
like the way I rolled my eyes, or like it was like really like, and then no one like, and then he just like, my dad went back to his position as normal. My mom took all, and then like people quickly could realize like, oh, she was absolved, but you still
Right.
tarnish my mom's
Yeah.
reputation. Like,
And
Hmm.
there's still people that could probably still be thinking, you know what I mean? Like it's
mhm.
fucked up.
Yeah, so
How old
those are
are
kind
you,
of things.
Sarah? If I
So
may
at that
ask.
time I was 11. I was 11
Wow,
years
you
old.
walking in and seeing like that
Yeah.
scene, that must have been very
I just
impactful.
came back from like school, and he stormed out of the house, and that was a memorable moment for me. Like was a
Right.
very because my mom was bawling, crying, and my mom, I just remembered that my mom was left in my brother's room, saying like, telling my dad is like, she's like, you got to believe me, I didn't do this. And my dad is like kind of like in that crossroads of like, you
Yeah.
know you know I'm gonna stick by you, but God forbid you did this to me, woman, kind of like
Hmm.
situation. But my dad was like, no, I know the woman I have, and my dad's like, I'm not. And it was literally just kind of a campaign to make my dad ended with my mom. Like I felt, I that's how I felt. Like
Disgusting.
no one can tell me different. That's how I felt. This
Hmm.
is like, you can forget what they did, you can forget, but you can never forget how that situation makes you feel. And that has,
Yeah.
lived with me. And then I realized it's like, it's a cold world in here. That was like episode 1.
It's shady. It's
Very shady.
shady.
But I think, well, we're gonna get into more a little bit of like how your healing journey on the next episode. But I think this kind of like comes like the whole closure, right, from the beginning until the end. Okay, guys, so that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.